Hi, this is a contribution to the discussion around the Wheel of Time teaser trailer. There have been lots of people discussing it, and this is just some additional thoughts to some of the theories going around. So this is the scene of Mat and Rand running slowed down with higher contrast, and I've marked in the size of people along the side of the road to help give a sense of the size of the white figure that is chasing them or possibly running after them. That size marked by the white bar is about the size of the figure coming out. I think it probably has to be a person on horseback leaning forward towards them. It's also moving pretty fast towards them up the road, but obviously it's very blurry and hard to see. This is Shadar Logoth, and I wanted to point out that Perrin definitely does have a ring on his finger here in this shot. If you zoom in, you can see that it's the fourth finger of the left hand, and I know Randland doesn't have our customs, but that does look a lot like a wedding ring. So in this next bit, I've reconstructed what I'd call the Logain battle, where presumably Logain's followers try to rescue him. And I think from the fact you can see that the Aes Sedai missing from the battle scene here are the exact same ones that are in with Logain, that all this happens basically at the same time. Presumably Logain's attack here kills Perrin or severely injures her, which her warder, who is out on the battle, would feel, and that causes him to run in here with the double axes and attack Logain. And you can see Moiraine is the only person there holding the shield at that point. So to run it through again, one of the things I noticed is that you can see in the Aes Sedai camp here a massive tent. Like, they're not camping light. That's a pretty fancy camping setup for on the road. And I thought one of the interesting things about that is that a lot of people have remarked that the Aes Sedai outfits are very bright, but they're the only people who are very bright. Their tent is bright, their outfits are bright, they're brightly coloured. Whereas when you look at the villagers coming in here attacking them, the colours on their outfits are very muted, they're very natural dyes. So I think that this colour on the Aes Sedai outfits is very much a choice. And it's meant to reflect the wealth and the power and the privilege of the Aes Sedai. So while we might associate that kind of level of colour with cheap off-the-shelf clothing, in this world, the only people who have access to that kind of colour are magic users and the very wealthy. Here I've put together all the footage of channeling that we see in the trailer, starting with Emond's Field. And there's a couple of things here I noticed. Firstly, that Moiraine is clearly drawing the power very much from these locations in the mountains or around the mountains. And the other thing is that when she calls the lightning, you can see some of the weaves are almost braided in what looks like a double helix. And this looks very different from this footage here where Perrin is healing Moiraine. And there's a very gentle power coming from what looks like her chest or her heart, and different again from Alanna here where she's got the air coming from between her hands, possibly drawn from around, it's a bit hard to tell. And Logain, you can see his face has this kind of cracked or mottled look before he pushes the power out. And here you can see this black sort of colour coming up Logain's back. So if we just look through that footage again, I did wonder whether, even though we don't have weaves of different colours, the different kinds of weaves may have different characteristics. Like, the reason Moiraine is drawing the power in this way is to logically create that difference in charge between the ground and the sky that will cause the lightning to come down, that there's a kind of logic to the different ways they're doing things. Whereas Perrin here, spirit is very much the weave for healing, and that's why it's coming from this different part of her and it looks different, it has a different kind of texture. this weave here, which is presumably mostly air, looks like very transparent, translucent, particularly like air. And Logain, who is probably using earth here, maybe the cracked look, the texture of that is part of what earth looks like. Or possibly it's the taint. It's hard to know. The next thing I wanted to talk about was this scene where we see Mat, Rand, Nynaeve and Lan running towards a waygate, and it appears there's Perrin, Egwene, Loyal and Moraine waiting at the waygate. Now, this in itself doesn't tell us that much, except that for some reason Mat and Rand and Nynaeve and Lan are together and rushing to rejoin the others. We also know that logically this must happen after Tarvalon, which makes you wonder, well, how did Lan and Nynaeve get separated from Moraine? How did Moraine end up with Perrin and Egwene and Loyal? And where have the two boys been that Nynaeve and Lan would go and get them? We know from other script changes that they're probably not going to Baerlon and they're probably not going to Caemlyn, which is interesting because we know that Kay Alexander is cast as Min, and that Basil Gill, the innkeeper in Caemlyn, has also been cast. It seems logical that both these characters would then get moved to Tarvalon, which is going to be the only other town that sort of has that same kind of city vibe, and probably track through Mat and Rand's story. This makes me think Min will probably keep her eyes and ears roll that we see and be somehow passing a message back to Moraine when Rand and Mat show up in Tarvalon. At, I would guess, Basil Gill's inn, so they'll move Min and Basil Gill together, but that Perrin and Egwene will already be rescued and rescued separately. I wonder whether when Min sees her viewings, it's going to be a turning point for Moraine to pick out which of these three boys she is in fact after. Next, I'd like to move to the Egwene scenes. My personal theory is that this is women's circle business. It's not a dream, it's not the accepted test. I think it's quite distinct from those things, but there's something interesting going on here. So people have pointed out that this is the same dress, that the dress is stained. I think it's also obvious Egwene's hair is not braided when she comes up out of the pool. I think it's also, if you look carefully, you can see that her hair is not really braided, and not braided in a style that she uses later when she's actually pushed in by Nynaeve as well. You can sort of see her hair fly up here as her hand loses its grip. It comes a bit more open. So it doesn't seem to be braided there either. I tend to think that this will be one scene that she'll get pushed in, she'll drift down the river, and then she'll come up here at the pool. It would seem a bit visually repetitive to have that happen sort of twice in slightly different ways over a day or two. But if that is the order that things are happening in, how do we explain that her shift is already stained with these colours, albeit in slightly different patterns to what she appears to have when she comes up out of the pool? And how indeed does Emmonsfield even create these patterns in the water? This seems like technology Emmonsfield probably doesn't have to make these kind of coloured paints. So my theory here is that Egwene is in a dress that has been used for this ritual before, but not for her. So it's got staining on it from previous initiates, for the women's circle, not for becoming an accepted or something like that. And the pool, I think, might actually be a ter'angreal that dates back to Manetheren. It appears to be sort of in some valley or underground place even, which might have protected it when Manetheren was destroyed. And that would be backward in a time where there were Aes Sedai Arges. It would make sense that Manetheren had technology that was used to find potential Aes Sedai. Anyway, thank you for listening. I've really enjoyed watching all the other videos people have been making about what's happening in this trailer. Bye.